when I was reading this book, it was just amazing to me, this whole interaction and this building of this relationship you have with John, right? Through the book, right? But I honestly felt like I was actually in this story, and just seeing the back and forth and the bridge that he was was able to build between you and your father, I think was the most powerful.
Yeah, for sure. I describe my dad as Archie Bunker. If anybody remembers Archie Bunker, that was my pop. And I vividly remember the one I called my father and described some of the things. He was not an emotional man by nature, but certainly that day on the phone he was. But for me, that experience with John, I couldn't understand it. So for me, I'm the guy, if I don't understand something, I want to ask more questions. So that prompted me to go back to John and ask him more questions. It's like watching a magic trick. I want to know how the magicians are doing this. And I don't want to be conned, but yet I couldn't deny the things he was saying. So that prompted me to go back. And I think our relationship built slowly over time. And from that one case, John would start getting details on other cases that I wasn't bringing to him. And it was mind-boggling to me.
How is that for you, John? I mean, you're working on one thing, and then you start getting, your guides are giving you more information based on other things, and it's obviously hard to, you can't ignore it at that point. But at that point, did you kind of feel like, okay, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and this is how I'm supposed to help?
So I think for me, I've kind of felt like if you would say to me back then, "Hey, can you do dumbbell curls, and how much can you curl?" I would, and I go, "Yeah, I think I could probably do 15 pounds. I could probably do 20 pounds." And then Bob came into the office and said, "Hey, can you lift this?" And they were like 80-pound dumbbells. And I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't think I could do that." And then I went and did it. And I was like, "Oh, I actually can do this." It kind of was like a new discovery of an aspect of something that I didn't think I can do. So for me, I think it became a way that I can stretch. And another analogy I can give to you, Sean, is when I first started doing this in a public way and I was like being invited on media. I was invited on a radio show in Florida, and I was also talking to somebody in Manhattan about going on radio. And the person in New York said, "Are you nervous about coming on?" And I went, "Well, I don't know if I could do this over the radio. I mean, I know I could do it over the phone, but I don't know if I could do it over the radio, especially adding in like nerves." So I said, she goes, "Well, you don't live in Florida." She goes, "Why don't you go do it in Florida?" She's like, "If you suck," she's like, "only the people in Florida are going to know. They're not going to know in New York where you live." So I was like, that is a good point. It kind of felt like that. Like, it felt like, well, if I suck working with Bob, only Bob's going to know. If I can't really do this, it's not going to be like I'm going to like fall on my face in front of people.
Right.
And it was like this whole new fun way of stretching when you're used to doing something one way that nobody would ever ask me to do. So it was a new discovery.
And it's pretty cool because you're playing, you're playing a hand in justice, right? That's you're helping tie up loose ends and bring people, to justice that, these families, that are out there that are still, they can't stop grieving because the unsolved mysteries, the unsolved murders. I mean, it's a big part of everything that they were doing. It was funny because I was, reading, when I was reading, I remember the show called White Collar where, Neil Caffrey, he helps the FBI. And I just go, oh, this is like that kind of concept, but like way different, right? Like way different. But there's a level of, showing that true collaboration can really change lives. And that's what I love to see here.
But it's also something that I discovered when Bob would come to me with information, right? Or a case, or he never provided me with details. It was almost like, here's something I need you to put your focus on. If I could show people the level of dedication and determination that Bob brought to the individual cases, I think it really shines a light on people who are like the unsung heroes that are fighting for justice for everybody, that never gets an accolade, a celebration, or an acknowledgement of what are the sacrifices that somebody goes through in order to get that justice, in order to achieve that. That I got invested in. I got invested in him, in what he was doing and where he was coming from, because I was equally as passionate in doing it in my world. And now I'm watching somebody doing it in theirs. And I was like, if I could help here, I want to.
Thank you. Bob, we're talking about sacrifice, right? And, when no matter what we do in life, whether you do what John does, you're an FBI agent, or even what I do, there's certain sacrifices that come with it, right? And a lot of times it could be family. I really enjoyed your transparency within the pages of the struggles, with Alex in the beginning, like when this case came
Yeah.
up, I just started getting to the point where I think she's getting really ticked off,
Yeah.
right? She walked out of the room saying, I hate your job.
Oh, yeah.
But I just would imagine that's such a hard spot to be in, because you love your family, you love your two, your son and your daughter, and but you also have this sense of responsibility to bring people to justice and close this case. So, man, how did you walk through that?
In retrospect, I wish I was better at both, right? I mean, you want to be all things to all people. Um, you know, I, there's only so many hours in the day, and I tried to use them as best I could. And it's funny, it's a great question you asked me. I vividly remember back in the days before cell phones, we had pagers. Remember pagers?
Yeah.
And as you
Yeah.
can imagine, in my world, my pager was constantly going off with all these different cases and things of that nature. And I remember vividly one day, and John, I don't think you know this story. I'm running around with my son in the living room wrestling with him. He's a toddler, and my pager went off. And my little boy, Connor, picked up the pager and threw it against the wall. Because for him, when he heard the pager go off, he knew that meant dad was going away. And I remember that moment and how sad that was. It's hard. I think that I wanted to be all things to all people. I don't think no matter what your career is, it's hard to do that, right? With age comes experience, and if I could go back again, I would probably do it a little bit differently. But I'm not a guy that does things by half measure. I'm all in, and that's a strength, but it's also a converse weakness, right?